Hello and welcome back. This is Sherri with Heart and Soulful in the studio today with a short version of the travel folio. So if you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I hope that if you like this video, you'll give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and say hello down in the comments for me. So if you are a beginner crafter, I would suggest watching the long version of this demonstration. I'm fairly new to junk journaling and art journaling and altered books, all this kind of crafting genre. And so I started my channel and kind of geared them for the beginner because I was a beginner, and I get excited about all the new tools I was learning about and that kind of thing. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, so as I've become more familiar with things, I find myself talking to people with more experience as far as the way that I'm doing it. But I get a lot of positive comment from beginners that they appreciate all the detail and explaining things. So I think I'm going to try going forward to do both, and maybe now that I'm getting more comfortable crafting on camera, doing long versions that I edit, and speed things up, which is what the last one is, but it's about an hour long. This project can be done in one day if you do it with fabric. If you're going to collage like I did on this one, it's probably going to take a couple of days. When I did this video the other day, the long version, it probably took me maybe 2.5 hours, because I was recording and starting and stopping and all of that to actually do this. But I got the video down to about an hour, like I said. So I'm going to try to do short versions for the experienced person and then longer versions for the beginner. So if you're, like I said, if you're a beginner, go watch the other one. So I was asked, I did a retrospective of the year 2021 a couple of days ago, where I showed projects that I had worked on in the year. Some were unfinished, some I hadn't done any videos on, just to kind of decide what I wanted to do next. And I was asked if I would do a demo on this travel folio. So this will be the short kind of overview, but I want to show you what it did. And because I was going to do other videos, I have made a couple more. I can show you kind of some just different ideas that you could use them for. So all three were made out of a recycled cracker box. And this is the first one I had done. When I did this one, I was working on learning Zentangle, which is a meditative doodling kind of thing. And for that, there's only a couple of tools you need. And so it made it an easy travel thing to take with me. When I have downtime that I just have a few minutes and want to doodle, or I just need to do something with my hands. So I made it so that the paper's removable. That way when you fill it up, you just replace it. Or you can change out the different type of materials you have in here in case you want to do something different. So in this case, I just used kitchen string because that's what I had where I was making this one. I didn't have a lot of supplies, and just some sketch paper. And then this is removable. I've done elastic here. You can do that or not. I didn't do it in the other two. Mostly because I wasn't sure what I was even going to use this for or what I wanted to put in it when I made it. This is removable so that I can have just my little pen that I need, and a shading pencil, and then a tortillon for the blending of my shading. And so this is everything I would need to do some Zentangle. So when you're using this, you can fold this back on itself. I didn't want these kind of permanently in the elastic. Like I said, because I might want to change it out to something different. And that way I have a nice surface if I'm sitting on the ground or on a bench or something to work with. And then these are just off to the side. So that was kind of my thought process in making this one. I'll kind of go into what materials I used, but let me show you the other two that I've made. This one I did my closure instead with a ribbon and a little button, and I'll talk about that when I get to the closure part, I think. And then with elastic, just to make it easy to get your pages in and out. And then I haven't done anything in the inside yet. So this one's kind of a blank slate. I'm gonna put, I think in this one, watercolor paper, and then make a little holder for, you know, a little water pen and some water soluble pencils so that I can do some watercolor on. So that's another idea. And then this one I did, the other two I had done collaging paper on, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But this one I just did in fabric, which was much faster. This one you can easily do in just a couple of hours. So this one I did my closure with elastic, a little handmade button that I had started. Again, elastic for this. And this one has coloring book, adult coloring book pages that I trimmed to fit, and then just fold it. That way you can, you know, color on one side and write things, journal or whatever on the other side. And then my little removable pen holder this one has just glitter gel pens in it. So that's just some different ideas of what you can use this for. And as far as construction, we'll kind of start from the beginning, but go through it just quickly for those experienced people. You're gonna start out with a cracker box, just a regular cracker box, and they're all about the same size. So any brand should work. And then a travel journal has a specific size, and I looked that up, and it was 8 1/4 by 4 1/4. So it just worked out that a cracker box, you end up actually between your sections are about 4 1/8, I think, or 4 1/8, I think. And then I cut it to be 8 1/4. So at least it's kind of that standard size, but the cracker box is actually a little bit longer. So if you wanted it to be longer, it could be, but this ended up kind of just being a nice workable size. So you're going to get your cracker box, and I'll show you using a different kind of box because I don't have any more cracker boxes, but you're just going to open up your box. And when you do that, you only want to open it up. You're not going to cut it. You're just going to open it where it was already glued together. So once you do that, you need to cut these off, the flaps. So I just folded it in half and used this as my straight edge because it's going to stay. And then cut your 8 1/2. You're going to trim off the little glued part, and that kind of dictated then my one side. And then I ended up, you know, trimming this little flap off too. Now, obviously this is not a square box, so it kind of disregard that, but you're going to want to just cut it straight and cut those two little ends off. So once you've done that, you kind of have this, okay? And when you look at it, let's see, this is my big side. This side is going to be my first fold. And then it's going to fold into this, and then this will be my closure side. Okay. So the next thing that you need to do is to score your spines. So the first spine is going to be, at least in my case, the way I laid mine out, where my utensils are going to sit. So you can do your own measurement, but I'll tell you what mine ended up being. If you know you need something as thick as this, you might want it a little bit bigger than what I did so that it fits better. So if you're going to do a watercolor pen, maybe your pen's a little narrower than this one. I do have some, I think, that are, I don't have them here. Oh, maybe I do. No, that one's about the same. Some of them are different thicknesses maybe, but they're a little thicker because you have to have a place for the water. So that will determine that first spine, okay? In most cases, if you're just going to use pencils or pens, this one being 3/8 wide is fine, okay? So you just use that first fold that is already there from the cracker box, and then just do either side, make a little mark for 3, so that the whole width of that spine is 3/8. And then this one and this one you want to be a half. This one at least a half because it needs to be bigger than this one. And this one you might want even a little bit bigger than that. But I went ahead and did mine both a half, I think. You could fudge this one a little bit bigger. So that way your pencils will fit in here, and then the next one, this will have a little bit of paper, and then you'll have your closure. So you're going to do 2 score marks on each one, so that you basically have 3 folds. I found that once I did my score marks, if I folded backwards first, it made it easier because I could see my line as opposed to on this printed side. So fold it back on both, use a bone folder and get those nice and folded, creased, and then you can do it back the other direction, okay? So once you have that all folded, you're ready to work on the outside. Now, if you have depending on what brand of crackers or whatever you have and what you're gonna do to the backside, you need to prep this, and I'll show you why. I did some on this other type of box, which was a little bit shinier, and I used Mod Podge to do my decoupage and sealed it and all that. Well, so I didn't prep this. So what happened was once everything was dry, this just peeled right off. So kind of a happy accident because now I have made a collage paper that is not attached to this. So if I want to put this in a journal as a pocket or something, that's kind of a nice thing. So now you know from my mistake, if you don't prep, you'll be able to peel this off of certain boxes and then just have this paper. So that's that. So you just rough this up with sandpaper, sanding block, nail file, whatever you have, just to get it, give it a tooth, get that shine off. So if you watch the long version of my, of this demo, at the very end, I do a quick short to music. It's just real fast of what these hand painted papers look like, and a sped up version of me actually collaging this whole thing so that you can kind of see how I did it. I'll probably end up doing a video just on that because it's kind of a fun process and it's something that I have ended up using for other little book covers. So, but it takes a while. That one, you'd want to do that part in one day and then the next day actually make your folio. So the other thing you can do is you can cover this with, you know, any kind of scrapbook paper you have. You can paint it and not cover it with anything. Or you can do like I did on this one and cover it with a piece of fabric, which made the whole thing much quicker. So for the decoupage, I used Mod Podge. You can use any kind of gel medium or anything that you use to decoupage to do the cover. Now, I will say one thing that I have thought of after. Maybe not everybody has eyelets and eyelet setters and all that kind of stuff. That's how I ended up putting my paper in, by just doing 2 eyelets here, and I used that to do my button. If you don't have that, you can still do this project. You can just punch holes, so then you would maybe just need a little pokey tool of some kind like you do for bookbinding, and just go ahead and sew it in like you would a bookbinding paper, and then you know, maybe have it where it ties so that you can remove it and put paper in and out. Or if you still do it with elastic and sew it in, then you know, you don't have to have this eyelet whole thing. This is just an easy way, quick, easy way to do it without sewing your pages in. Again, you can hand sew a button on instead of doing the eyelet thing if you don't have that. So, you know, like carpenters say, there's more than one way to build a box. So you can make do with what you happen to have. So I did this one with fabric. Like I said, it was much quicker. You want to use the right kind of glue to attach your fabric, but if you're experienced, you'll know what that is. It can even be Mod Podge, probably would work. That's what I used to put my scrim in anyway. I used this, I used to make lampshades, so I used this quick glue that's from the lamp shop to do mine, and it worked out great. It dries really fast, which is nice. So you're gonna put your fabric, whatever you're gonna do on the outside, and then on the inside of mine, I put scrim. I like working with scrim, and if you haven't used that before, but you've seen me work with it if you've watched me for any length of time, it's this gauzy fabric that's sheer. It's stronger than gauze or cheesecloth as far as its durability, but it just has that same kind of feel to it. So in my case for this one and this one, and actually all of them, I just used a stencil and some craft paint. I used antique parchment in this Apple Barrel brand craft paint to do some stencil on here. The thing that I found when I did this one that I just love how it turned out, the little circles, is cut your scrim to fit, and then don't glue it on first. Do the stenciling first. I think it's a cleaner look if you do it that way. My one that I did here, I glued this one down first and then stenciled, and it's kind of gloppy here and there where I had a little bit too much paint. It soaked into the cardboard, and I didn't really like that as much. So do the scrim, stencil it first. One tip that I have is I liked working on this black mat because I could see through the scrim. I could see where I was stamping or stenciling my design because I kind of just wanted it random. So a tip that I didn't do, but I will next time, is so that I don't waste, this is sheer and it's an open weave, so your paint will go through to here. So I think the smart thing for me to do next time will be either to take one of my painted papers that I use for backgrounds that maybe I want to add another layer to, like this, something like that. Put that under it because it's enough color you'll be able to see, or even just a piece of colored cardstock that you can put a design on, something colored so that you see through it. But then that paint, that extra paint is going to go through and leave another imprint of your stencil under here. So that way you don't waste that paint and you have another a design on something else for another project. So do that, and then once you're done, you can go ahead and glue that on, and then it's pretty much done. You've made your cover, and you'll have kind of this blank thing. Do the eyelets. Now, a tip for the eyelets that I didn't do on this one, I thought of after I'd already put them in, but I did do it on the closure, is put your string, decide whatever you're going to use, and I don't cut it to the length I want yet. I just stick it through the hole, put my eyelet and my closure, whatever it is, in through the hole so it's hanging out here, and then that way when you close it, it's grabbing this so it's in there nice and tight, and you haven't had to like tie a knot or anything under there. Plus it will keep you from making this too tight, so that because you've already got whatever you're going to use under there, and then that way it's left that gap for you to wrap it around. So I like to, when I do that, have it kind of wrap around your thing twice, and then either once or twice around your button, and then that's usually a good closure. So the thing that I didn't do that I wish I would have done is I never really kind of like having this out here. So I should have put my elastic through the hole and done the eyelet just like this. And this one I need to trim off here. So you put it on there and then you just trim that off, and now it's gone. So I should have done that here, and then that way I wouldn't have this on the outside of my spine. So next time that's what I will do. And the other thing too, I should point out, but if you're experienced, you know this, when you decoupage paper on something that's a book spine, it's going to probably crack and peel up like this because paper cracks. So this one I was in a big rush to do, and so it's better now that it's dry. I need to glue that little bit down. But this first one that I had done, I took my time, and actually it's even kind of coming up. You want to make sure if you decoupage it that you go ahead and seal it afterwards with like another layer of Mod Podge and let it dry really well before you start doing other things to it. And that way it'll help from keeping that cracking. If you're using it for yourself, it's really not that big a deal. The other thing you could do is put some bookbinding tape there, or glue a piece of fabric there or something else, just to kind of reinforce the spine a little bit. So, you know, you'll do what you want. So that's the eyelets, the closure. Closures, you can use anything you can think of. This is just a couple of pieces of the cracker box, just cut out with a circle punch, and then the eyelet put in there, and that makes that nice and sturdy for a little closure like a coin envelope. This one I used a wooden button, like I said. It had 2 holes. But if you have a way to drill that out, which I do because I do jewelry, I just drilled that out. This is balsa wood, so it was really easy to get through, and just use an eyelet. Or I could have just sewn this on, punched 2 holes and sewn it on with thread. So you can do that for your closure. This one actually was like a nice happy accident that this was a paper. I was making my handmade buttons, you know, if you follow me, you know I make handmade buttons. And this is the stage of the button before I put resin on it. So it's really just layers and layers of cardstock that make it that thick. And my Crocodile actually would punched through those layers because it's really just a bunch of layers of cardstock, like I said. So it punched the hole nice through there. So that's it. Like I said, for the pages inside, if you do your eyelets kind of here and here, it made it so that I think my paper ended up being, you know, like 7 inches by 4 or 3 and 4, something like that. You'll measure, put this in first, and then just measure the distance that you have in between so that it doesn't tear the tops of your paper, you know, so that it fits in there. And then you'll measure how much room you have before that fold, and then cut your papers. And then on this, you could put the elastic like I did. If you sew it on, you're going to end up seeing stitch marks through there. On my collage ones, because of the color of thread I used, they don't show up too much, but they are there. And I don't know that they're really necessary now that I've gotten to figure out what I want to use this for. I really like the idea of having this little removable thing. And it's just made with a couple of layers of cardstock scrap that I had. I have had a piece of my handmade, take all these out so you can see, of my handmade painted book page that I had that kind of coordinated. And then one thing I do want to mention, when you do the elastic on something thin, because I put my last piece of cardstock after to kind of cover up the thread, the stitching and stuff. I was trying to do it just on a couple of layers of book page before I glued it down. When you stitch back and forth to hold your elastic in, you're perforating the paper. And so it's just going to pull right through. So I found the better thing to do was I glued a piece of ribbon front and back. You can't see it now because it's covered. But I have ribbon on the front of the paper and the back. So that way I'm sewing into another fabric and it's going to just be much more durable. So on this one, I just kind of left little gaps in my elastic so that I would have room to put more than one pen, you know, that way in case I end up using this one for watercolor, that last one's big enough that my watercolor one will fit, and then I can still fit pencils in. So just make that. This ended up, because of the paper I had, I ended up cutting it a little shorter. When I measured, 7.5 by 3.5 is a good size for this little removable part. So this one ended up 7 by 3.5, but 7.5 by 3.5, and then you get it long enough for whatever instruments that you want to put in there. And then I've just used a little binder clip to hold it in. I could put that elastic in, but I don't know that I'm going to really need it. So that's my share, my little travel folio. That way, now that if I want to go do something that's kind of quiet and meditative and for longer than I want, I can have something to keep my hands busy. So I hope you like this video. If you do, give me a thumbs up. I'll put a link down below to the longer version in case you want to actually see this in more detail. But I think if you've done these kind of things before, that should cover everything that you need to know. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.